Dear reader, for the sake of this letter, I'm grey. For the most part, I look like your average university student, but that's far from the truth. In reality, I'm autistic. Crazy, right? Wrong. This letter is my story, detailing how I got diagnosed, what kind of support I have received, and what life is like as an autistic woman. So, what is autism? Autism is an invisible disability and is characterized by a lack of communication skills, misunderstanding thoughts and feelings, being overwhelmed in situations, social anxiety, delay in information processing, and repetition of phrases or actions, also known as stimming. Some individuals with autism may have a combination of these, while others, such as myself, have all six. Autism can also coexist alongside other disorders such as ADHD, ADD, or dyslexia, which is why I prefer the term ASD, or Autism Spectrum Disorder, to be used when describing autism. It encompasses everything. A lot of individuals with ASD don't appear like they have ASD, like myself. Societal norms and expectations have kind of forced me to mask my autistic traits and mirror neurotypical traits. Masking is when a neurodivergent individual learns, practices, and performs certain behaviors to fit in with the neurotypical society that we often find ourselves in. Masking behaviors are typically learned as children or young adults and can include behaviors such as hiding special interests as they're scared of getting bullied, or forcing eye contact when it makes them uncomfortable, and hugging when physical contact makes them uncomfortable. Masked behaviors are usually outside the individual's comfort zone and may cause a lot of internal distress when the behavior is performed. It's like you're some sort of actor in society's never-ending circus. After masking my traits for about 15 years, I know I struggle showing my true colors. My special interests are confined to my room. I take hugs from family even though I've tried to set that boundary in place just so I don't hurt their feelings. And my voice often goes unheard when I'm with other people, as I don't want what I say to be misinterpreted, or I can't find an organic way to work the point into the discussion. Sometimes the mask slowly becomes your life, and you have to work for a long time to just be yourself. I was diagnosed when I was 7, almost 8. It probably would have been earlier if it weren't for waiting lists, but here we are. The stages of my autistic characteristics began in nursery school. I had to be at a certain spot in the queue or had to have a certain color of sticker. It was only when I started primary school that autism was suggested. My parents started the ball rolling to get me referred for a diagnosis. In the meantime, I was a little ticking time bomb waiting to explode. I was masking my struggles at school and unmasking them at home in the form of outbursts. After about 2 years of waiting, I was able to get referred for a diagnosis. My parents got the diagnosis at a multi-agency meeting after a long couple of months. With a diagnosis, you'd think that it'd be a little bit easier, right? Well, you'd be partially right. In primary school, I had an individual education plan each term, usually geared towards making friends. By primary 7, whenever the teacher would call me up to go over it, I was thinking, am I ever going to do this? And the answer was not always. When it came to supporting me with my autism, there was nothing concrete. Teachers made allowances, but everything was unofficial. You might be asking yourself why the support was like this. The answer is that I didn't get an official statement during my diagnosis. When I hit secondary school, everything was thrown out the window. My mother fought a long war with my school to try and get something set up. Her initial efforts paid off. For like a year, I had an IEP. I received help to develop my comprehension skills, and certain teachers and the receptionist made allowances for me. However, it felt like I was thrown in the deep end and had to find my own strategies to cope. By Christmas, I memorized the quickest path to class to avoid the crowds in the halls. I had quit most of my extracurricular activities as I was drowning in the amount of homework I received. I started stress eating to try cope with the amount of stress and anxiety I was feeling, and I struggled to make friends. So much so that I usually ate my lunch alone in the bathrooms. Until my sister started the following year, and I didn't want my parents to know. Was I lonely? Yes, but that didn't stop me from trying. I was fighting the social anxiety war as my mum was fighting the support war. On her front, it was a field of landmines, where talking with the teachers and putting accommodations in place felt like a struggle. And on my front, it was a firefight of unrealistic expectations and burnout. During my first parent-teacher meeting, my mum asked one of the teachers to make allowances for essays, as my brain doesn't work in a linear way, and he simply said, "I don't make allowances." When it came to tackle GCSEs and A-levels, I received rest breaks, but no extra time, as apparently you can't have both at that school. I struggled with the amount of information that I had to memorize, and to this day, I have never found my preferred study method. I was really lucky as COVID hit right when my GCSEs were happening. I ended up passing based on centre-assessed grades. Same thing happened with my first year of A-levels. However, my second year was back to exams, and I was stressed with schoolwork and external family matters. I couldn't concentrate or fully understand the content I was being taught. And did I receive any support from teachers or other staff members? No, I didn't. Now I'm in my second year of uni. The amount of support that's offered at this stage of my education is mental compared to what I was offered before. For example, I have a laptop riddled with software designed to help me with coursework. I can record lessons so I can look back on them, and I have an amazing mentor to help me with assignments. It's hard to believe how far I've come after 3 years. I've went from an anxiety-filled, burnt-out high schooler to a slightly less anxiety-filled, creative young adult in her element, living her best life, pursuing a career path that she's passionate about, which was only hindered by my other stages of education. When media outlets such as film, TV, and books portray autism, it's usually in a negative light, or they highlight each extreme of the spectrum, and this impacts the audience into having a specific view on autism. Misrepresenting groups is fine, as long as the story's good, right? No. It's far from the truth. The impact of the media and how autistic individuals are portrayed leaves autistic people feeling misrepresented, and they may mask or change to be someone they're not. Growing up, I never saw myself in characters. I've watched media with characters with ASD and felt off when traits and behaviors were displayed. This is because of the fact that most characters are male, but also the unrealistic standards the writers have with their autistic characters. Common myths include everyone with autism is the same, someone with autism doesn't want to make friends, and autism is more common now than, say, 20 years ago. More recently, I've seen people with autism or that have autistic family or friends take to social media, telling their story, their experiences, and what neurotypical people assume when it comes to autism. It's the same fire I have to try to change how writers write neurodivergent characters. Just like any movement, we are trying to change society to be more acceptable, more inclusive, and more informed. When most people think of strengths of autism, they think of the stereotypical strengths, such as being good at maths. But strengths vary from person to person. Just because someone has one strength doesn't mean another person will have the same strength. For me, some of my greatest strengths come from autism. For example, I'm very creative. I draw, I play guitar, and I'm a film student who started out by using her stuffed toys to create silent stop-motion films. One of my greatest passions that I don't usually advertise is designing lightsabers from the Star Wars franchise for characters in other media. In this process, I've learned the meanings of the blade color, the styles of hilts, and their history. I choose a character, do a sketch for their hilt, decide their color palette, and decide their blade color based on their personality and story within the plot. Another example is that I get fixated on a task, whether that be coursework, playing games, or cleaning, and spend hours on a task. During one summer holiday, I spent 2 to 3 weeks on a friend's Minecraft server, played for like 4 hours a day, and became one of the richest people on the server. Did I have too much free time? Probably. When it comes to coursework, I spent hours writing scripts and planning logistics for filming times. As for weaknesses, I admit I have some of the stereotype weaknesses. For example, I am the most introverted person you'd ever meet. I'm quite content staying in, watching something or playing a game instead of going out. That's not to say I haven't tried going out to like a bar. I just find the environment too overwhelming and loud. I once went out to a bar with a group of friends. There were 4 of us in total. We got there just before midnight and I was like, okay, this is manageable. Oh, how wrong I was. When the clock struck midnight, everything was dialed up to 11. It became too loud and too overwhelming. After I felt like I ruined the night for my friends, as one of them was always sat downstairs with me while the other 2 were upstairs. Another limitation I find that I have with autism is that my little fears and phobias are blown way out of proportion, and I'm afraid of a lot of things, dear reader. For example, I will sprint in the opposite direction when I see a wasp near me. If it's in the same room, God help me. Also, needles. I will scream and cry if a needle comes close to me. I remember in secondary school I had to get boosters for something. It was 2 needles, 1 in each arm. I remember I got the first one and I was crying, but the nurse forgot something. I was sitting in the lecture theatre surrounded by things that can scare the living hell out of me. That was for about 10 minutes before I got the other one. I was given a Rice Krispie bun by one of the nurses in the middle of it, which did calm me down a bit. However, I would not do that again. Also, I find that my self-esteem and self-confidence is quite low. No clue why. Probably something I picked up in secondary school. I've written scripts, made some art, or snapped some scenery photos thinking they were nothing special, only to have others say they were amazing. My mentor for this year absolutely hates it when I imply that I'm not talented enough for something. Take this letter for example. I easily wrote my flaws, but I struggled to write my strengths. Now, have I managed to change your mind when it comes to autism? Have you learned something that you didn't know before? I hope so. As I'm writing this, I'm tearing up as some of these moments are some of my worst. Normally, I don't like talking openly about my autism, but I feel like this is necessary in today's society that's flooded with misinformation and myths. Right now, there's a push for equality in a variety of areas, but the one that's often overlooked is the disabled community, where discrimination is still a major problem that 99% of us face. So, my advice to you is to do your own research. Be patient with people with autism as we take longer to process your statements, and to listen to autistic stories. This is just my story. If you want one takeaway from this entire thing, take this. Don't judge a book by its cover, or in this case, the cover by the book. Thank you for listening to my story. Gray, out.